With this wounded gray being revealed to me about death, Jesus' true power, and what happens after we leave this world, will shatter everything you think you know about salvation and forgiveness. Before this story ends, you'll understand why your guilt is keeping you trapped, why Jesus' message about eternal life was far more literal than churches ever taught, and why the death you fear is actually the doorway to something extraordinary. If you're ready to hear truths that have been hidden for 2,000 years, truths about consciousness, death, and the real reason Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life," subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell. Because what happened to Frank Morrison on a lonely highway in Nevada in 1987 will open your eyes to the eternal nature of your own soul. Now, let me tell you how it all started.
The night of October 23, 1987, started like any other night run for Frank Morrison. At 11:47 p.m., he was 70 miles outside of Reno, hauling refrigerated produce to Sacramento on Highway 50. The two-lane road stretched empty in both directions, just as headlights cutting through the desert darkness and the occasional jackrabbit frozen in the beam. Frank had driven this route 100 times over his 23 years as a long-haul trucker. He knew every turn, every grade, every truck stop bathroom between here and the California border. The monotony usually gave him too much time to think, too much time to remember things he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. At 11:52 p.m., something changed. A flash of brilliant blue-white light erupted in his rearview mirror, so bright it left afterimages dancing across his vision. Frank's first thought was lightning, but the sky had been clear all night, stars sharp as diamonds overhead. "What the hell?" he muttered, slowing the 18-wheeler. The light intensified, then arced downwards somewhere behind him, maybe a quarter-mile back. It didn't fade like lightning. Instead, it pulsed twice, 3 times, then went dark. Frank's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Rational explanations ran through his mind. Transformer explosion at a substation, military flare, maybe even a small plane in distress. That last thought made his decision for him. He'd been a volunteer firefighter back in his early 20s. If someone needed help, he couldn't just drive past. He pulled the rig onto the shoulder, hazards flashing, and grabbed the CB radio. "Breaker, breaker, this is Nighthawk on Highway 50, mile marker 127. Anyone else see that light show back there? Over." Static. Dead air. Not even the usual chatter from other truckers. He tried again. Nothing. Something felt wrong. The hair on his arms stood up and a chill ran down his spine, despite the warm cab. He'd learned to trust his instincts over 2 decades on the road, and every instinct told him to put the truck in gear and keep driving. But there was another instinct, older, deeper, the one that made him rush into that intersection 5 years ago, trying to save a little boy who'd run into the street. The instinct to help, even when helping came too late. Frank grabbed his first aid kit and fire extinguisher from behind the seat, habits from his firefighting days that had never left him. He climbed down from the cab, boots crunching on gravel, and started walking back along the highway shoulder. The Nevada desert at night was never truly silent. There were always sounds, wind through sagebrush, distant coyotes, the tick of cooling engines. But now, Frank realized, there was nothing. Absolute silence pressed against his eardrums like cotton. He walked 50 yards, then 100. The beam of his flashlight swept across empty asphalt and scrub vegetation. Maybe he'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe exhaustion and too much coffee were finally catching up with him. Then he saw the craft. It sat maybe 30 feet off the road, partially hidden behind a rocky outcrop. Not crashed, more like it had made an emergency landing, gouging shallow furrows in the hard-packed earth. The thing was maybe 20 feet across, disc-shaped, with a surface that seemed to absorb his flashlight beam rather than reflect it. Frank's mind couldn't process what he was seeing. This wasn't possible. Things like this don't happen to truck drivers on Highway 50. Things like this don't happen at all. He should run. He should get back to the truck, call the police, Let someone else handle this. But his feet kept moving forward, drawn by the same terrible fascination that makes people slow down at accidents. That's when he saw the being. It was maybe 15 feet from the craft, lying motionless on the ground. Small, no more than 4 feet tall. Thin limbs, large head, skin that looked gray in the darkness, smooth and somehow luminous. Frank's flashlight beam found the face, and his breath caught in his throat. Enormous black eyes stared up at him, not exactly at him, but through him, past him, seeing something Frank couldn't comprehend. The being's mouth was barely visible, just a thin line, no nose to speak of. The head was disproportionately large, like a child's proportions, but utterly alien. A gray. The word appeared in Frank's mind from nowhere. He'd seen the drawings, heard the stories dismissed as fantasy and delusion, but this was real. This was happening. The being moved slightly, and Frank saw the wound. A long gash across its torso, oozing a fluid that looked silver in the flashlight beam. The creature's chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. It was dying. Frank dropped to his knees beside the being, his first aid training overriding his terror. Bleeding, breathing, injured. Those were problems he understood, whether the patient was human or whatever this was. Then the voice entered his mind. Not words, not exactly. More like concepts and emotions flowing directly into his consciousness, bypassing his ears entirely. Help, please, not much time. The being's large black eyes fixed on Frank's face, and in that gaze, Frank saw something he recognized. Pain, fear, and beneath it all, a profound gentleness. "Jesus Christ," Frank whispered. The being's mouth didn't move, but Frank felt something like a smile in his mind. Yes, exactly. Jesus. That is why I came. For you, Frank Morrison. To tell you what he really meant, before you waste the rest of your life drowning in guilt that was never yours to carry. Frank's hands froze over his first aid kit. How do you know my name? How do you know? Everything. I know everything about you, about your son, about October 17th, 1982, about the guilt that is killing you more surely than this wound is killing me. Now please, help me, and let me help you. We don't have much time.
Frank Morrison had been a truck driver for 23 years, since he was 30 years old. Known throughout the Nevada trucking community as reliable, punctual, and unshakable behind the wheel, he'd built a reputation as someone who delivered on time, every time, regardless of weather or road conditions. But beneath the competent exterior, beneath the CB radio banter and the professional calm, Frank was a man slowly dying inside. Everything changed on October 17th, 1982. Frank had been home for the weekend, a rare luxury for a long-haul trucker. His wife Sarah had planned a family picnic at the park near their house in Carson City. Their son Danny, just turned 8, had been excited for days, bouncing around the house talking about feeding the ducks and playing on the swings. It was supposed to be a perfect autumn Sunday, the kind of day that makes memories you cherish for a lifetime. Instead, it became the day that divided Frank's life into before and after. They'd been walking back to the car, Danny running ahead the way he always did, pure energy, fearless, trusting that the world was safe because Mom and Dad were there. Frank had called after him to slow down, but Danny was already at the crosswalk, waiting at the corner like he'd been taught. The light changed. Danny looked both ways, Frank saw him do it, and stepped into the street. The drunk driver came out of nowhere, running the red light at 50 miles an hour in a residential zone. Frank screamed Danny's name and ran, his body moving before his mind could process what was happening. He made it 3 steps before the impact. Danny flew 15 feet, landed like a broken doll, died before the ambulance arrived. Frank had been 10 feet away, 10 feet from his son, running as fast as he could, and it wasn't enough. Wasn't nearly enough. The drunk driver, a 23-year-old kid named Michael Peterson, survived with barely a scratch. Got 6 years for vehicle manslaughter, served 3. Last Frank heard, he was living in Reno, working construction, moving on with his life. While Danny remained forever 8 years old, forever running ahead, forever trusting that his dad would keep him safe. Sarah tried to hold the marriage together. God knows she tried. For 2 years she held on, going through the motions of being a wife to a man who'd stopped being a husband. Frank couldn't touch her without remembering, couldn't sleep in their bed without seeing Danny's empty room down the hall, couldn't exist in their house without drowning in the absence of their son. In 1984, Sarah finally gave up, filed for divorce, moved back east to live with her sister. Frank didn't fight it. What was the point? He had already lost everything that mattered. He threw himself into trucking after that, taking longer routes, volunteering for night runs, spending as little time as possible in Carson City. His 1-bedroom apartment was just a place to shower and sleep between hauls. The truck became his real home, the road his only family. Raised Catholic, Frank had once believed with the certainty of childhood that God was loving, that prayers were answered, that there was meaning in suffering. His mother had taken him to Mass every Sunday until he was 18, and though he drifted from regular attendance as an adult, the foundation remained. He'd taught Danny to say prayers before bed, had explained heaven as a beautiful place where good people went after they died. But after Danny's death, the prayers stopped working. Frank would kneel beside his bed in whatever motel or truck stop he'd landed in, begging God for answers, for peace, for just one sign that Danny was okay, that his little boy wasn't just gone, erased, reduced to a name on a headstone. The silence was deafening. Night after night, year after year, Frank prayed into an empty void that offered nothing back. Where was God when Danny needed him? Where was the loving father who supposedly watched over children? Where was the meaning in an 8-year-old boy being torn from life before he'd barely lived? The guilt consumed him. Rational thought said it wasn't his fault. The drunk driver was to blame, the alcohol was to blame, random chance was to blame. But rationality didn't help at 3 a.m. when Frank jerked awake from nightmares, seeing Danny's face in those last seconds, hearing his own voice screaming his son's name, feeling the paralysis of being too far away, too slow, too human to stop the inevitable. If he'd held Danny's hand, if he'd made him walk beside them instead of running ahead, if he'd been paying more attention, been faster, been better. The ifs were endless, infinite variations of scenarios where Danny lived and Frank wasn't a failure as a father. At 53, he had everything he thought mattered when he was younger. His own rig, good savings, respect among his peers, but felt completely hollow inside. Friends from his firefighting days had stopped calling after he declined too many invitations. His ex-wife sent Christmas cards, but never called. His parents had passed within a year of each other, his mother from cancer, his father from what doctors called heart failure, but Frank knew was a broken heart over losing his grandson. The loneliness wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, existential. Frank had lost connection not just to other people, but to the fundamental sense that life had purpose, that existence meant something beyond random suffering and eventual oblivion. Late at night, when sleep wouldn't come and another ghost town truck stop stretched outside his windshield, Frank would stare at the ceiling of his cab and ask the same question he'd been asking for 5 years. Is this all there is? Is this punishment? Will I ever see my son again, or is death just nothing? An end to consciousness, an end to Frank Morrison, an end to Danny forever. Maybe he'd been lied to. Maybe the promises of heaven and reunion and eternal love were just stories people told themselves to make death less terrifying. Maybe when the lights went out, that was it. Nothing. Darkness. Danny gone forever into that darkness, and Frank eventually following, and neither of them ever existing again in any meaningful way. The Catholic Church's promises rang hollow now. God has a plan. He's in a better place. You'll see him again in heaven. Empty platitudes that offered no comfort, no evidence, no real hope. Just pretty words that couldn't fill the Danny-shaped hole in Frank's chest. And then came the night of October 23rd, 1987, when Frank Morrison's carefully constructed worldview, built on guilt, grief, and the terrible certainty that death meant permanent separation, would shatter completely. Not destroyed, but expanded into something far more extraordinary than he had ever imagined possible.
Frank's hands moved automatically, his first aid training overriding the impossibility of the situation. He popped open the metal kit, its contents rattling as his hands trembled. "I don't know if human medical supplies will even help you," Frank said aloud, his voice hoarse, "but I've got to try something." Your compassion. That is what helps. More than bandages. The being's thoughts flowed into Frank's mind with a gentleness that contradicted its alien appearance. There was no aggression here, no threat, just pain and a strange, profound patience. Frank pulled out gauze pads and antiseptic. The wound across the being's torso was unlike anything he'd seen. The edges seemed almost crystalline, the silver fluid flowing from it luminous in the darkness. He pressed the gauze against it gently, half expecting the being to cry out. Instead, he felt gratitude wash through his consciousness. "Thank you, Frank Morrison. You could have run. Most would have. Yeah, well, I've seen too many people die alone, even if you're whatever you are. Nobody should die alone in the dark. Even though I am not human?" "Even though you're not human." Frank sat back on his heels, studying the being's face. Those enormous black eyes reflected the stars above, and Frank found himself searching them for something familiar. "Besides, you're hurt. That's all that matters right now." He pulled a thermal blanket from his kit, the kind designed for shock victims. "This might help. You're cold." As Frank draped the blanket over the being's small frame, something shifted in the air between them. A trust formed, fragile but real. "I crashed here 3 hours ago. My ship malfunctioned during atmospheric entry. I have been lying here, knowing I would die, until you came. Can I move you? Get you to my truck? It's warmer there, and I've got more supplies." Frank glanced back toward the highway. His rig sat bathed in the orange glow of its hazard lights, engine still idling. "Yes, but Frank, you must understand, I did not crash here by accident." Frank paused, his hands under the being's shoulders, preparing to lift. "What do you mean?" "I came here for you, specifically for you. This night, this place, this moment, none of it is a coincidence. I have been searching for you." A chill ran down Frank's spine that had nothing to do with the desert night air. "Why? Why me?" "Because you are dying, Frank. Not physically, not yet, but spiritually. The guilt over your son is consuming you from the inside.
You pray to a God you believe has abandoned you. You carry guilt for something that was never your fault. And most dangerous of all, you believe death ended Danny. That when consciousness leaves the body, it simply stops. Frank's throat tightened. Tears burned behind his eyes. How do you know about Danny? Because I know about Jesus, about what he really taught, about what death really is, and about why Danny is not gone, not in any way that matters. The being's large eyes fixed on Frank's face with an intensity that made him feel seen, truly seen for the first time in 5 years. I am dying from this wound, Frank Morrison. My physical form will not survive the night. But before I transition, I have a message to deliver. To you, from the consciousness you call Jesus, about the real nature of death, resurrection, and eternal life. Frank lifted the being carefully, shocked by how light it was, no more than 40 pounds. You're saying Jesus sent you to find me? Not sent, but the same consciousness that animated the man you called Jesus, the same Christ consciousness that exists beyond physical form, that consciousness guided you to me because you need to know the truth before you waste the rest of your life drowning in unnecessary guilt, before you die without understanding what Jesus really meant when he said, I am the resurrection and the life. Frank carried the being toward his truck, his mind reeling. This was insane, impossible. A gray alien crashed in the Nevada desert, claiming to have messages about Jesus and death and his son? He should be running. He should be terrified. But instead, walking through the desert darkness with this wounded stranger from the stars cradled in his arms, Frank felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Good, the being transmitted. Hope is the beginning. Now let me show you why that hope is justified. Let me show you what Jesus really taught about consciousness, death, and the eternal nature of love.
Frank settled the being in the truck's sleeper cab, propping pillows behind its back. The creature was so small it looked almost childlike against the bedding, and Frank felt a protective instinct surge through him, the same instinct that had made him run toward Danny that terrible day. "Water?" Frank offered, holding up a bottle. "Or do you even?" "I do not require physical sustenance the way you do, but thank you." Frank sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped between his knees. Outside, the Nevada desert stretched in all directions, silent and empty. Inside this small space, the most important conversation of his life was about to begin. "You said you came here to tell me about Danny, about Jesus." Frank's voice cracked. "Is my son... is he okay? Is he somewhere?" "Your son is more than okay. He is more alive now than he ever was in physical form." Frank's heart hammered. "What does that mean?" "It means everything you were taught about death was incomplete. Not wrong, incomplete. The churches teach that physical death is a transition to heaven or hell based on worthiness. They teach that you will reunite with loved ones if you are good enough, faithful enough, obedient enough." The being paused, and Frank felt waves of gentle compassion flowing from its consciousness into his own. "But that is not what Jesus taught. That is not what death actually is." "Then what is it?" Frank leaned forward. "What happens when we die?"
Death is simply consciousness withdrawing from physical form, like taking off a coat. The coat is not you, it is something you wore temporarily. When Danny's body died that day, Danny, his consciousness, his awareness, his essential self, did not die, could not die, because consciousness is eternal. Frank shook his head, wanting to believe but afraid to. The church says, the church transformed Jesus' teachings of empowerment into doctrines of dependency. Listen carefully, Frank. When Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life," he was not claiming to be unique. He was revealing truth about all consciousness, including your own, including Danny's. I don't understand. Jesus demonstrated that consciousness continues beyond physical death. His resurrection was not a miracle. It was a demonstration of physics you don't yet understand. He showed that awareness, memory, love, everything that makes you, survives the death of the body. Frank's hands trembled. So Danny is somewhere? He still exists? Danny is everywhere and nowhere. He exists in a state of consciousness without physical limitation. He can perceive you. He knows you love him. He understands what happened was not your fault. Tears spilled down Frank's cheeks. How do you know this? Because consciousness beyond physical form can perceive things you cannot while trapped in a body. Danny sees you now, Frank. He has seen you every night you have prayed, every time you have wept, every moment you have blamed yourself. And he is not angry. He is not lost. He is waiting for you to understand that death did not separate you. Only your belief in separation separated you. I want to believe that. Frank's voice broke. God, I want to believe that so badly. But how do I know it's true? How do I know you're not just telling me what I want to hear? Because I will show you. Before this night ends, you will have proof that everything I have told you is true. The being shifted slightly, wincing with pain, and Frank instinctively reached out to adjust its pillows. You have spent 5 years praying for forgiveness for a sin you never committed. You believe you failed, Danny. You believe God is punishing you with silence. You believe you are unworthy of peace. I was his father. Frank's voice was raw. I was supposed to protect him. You were human, with human limitations. You could not see the future. You could not move faster than physics allows. You did everything a loving father could do. The drunk driver, he bears responsibility. Random chance bears responsibility. But you, Frank Morrison, are innocent. Then why won't God answer my prayers? Why the silence? There has been no silence. God, the universal consciousness that Jesus called Father, has been responding constantly. But you have been praying from a frequency of guilt and unworthiness, and that frequency prevents you from receiving the response. Frank stared at the being. What do you mean by frequency? Jesus taught this, though the words were changed over centuries. He said, "Whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours."
He was teaching consciousness technology. Your emotions create frequencies. Guilt creates one frequency. Faith creates another. You cannot receive peace while broadcasting guilt. So I've been praying wrong? For 5 years I've been doing it wrong? Not wrong, incomplete. You have been begging external God for forgiveness you already have. What you need to do is forgive yourself. Accept that Danny's death was not your fault. Understand that Danny still exists, still loves you, and wants desperately for you to stop suffering. Frank buried his face in his hands, sobs shaking his shoulders. The grief and guilt of 5 years poured out of him in great gasping waves. And through it all, he felt the being's consciousness surrounding him, not judging, not demanding, just holding space for his pain with infinite gentleness. That is good. Cry. Release it. And when you are ready, I will show you proof that everything I have told you is true.
Frank wiped his eyes with shaking hands. This is crazy. I'm sitting in my truck, talking to an alien about my dead son and Jesus. I finally snapped. The stress, the loneliness, 5 years of grief, I've gone insane. You have not lost your sanity. Your mind is protecting itself from information that challenges everything you believed. This is natural, Frank. Expected. But this doesn't happen. Things like this don't happen to truck drivers on Highway 50. Things like this happen more often than you know. Most people simply aren't ready to see. You are ready. That is why I found you. Frank's Catholic upbringing surged forward. The Bible warns about false teachers, about Satan appearing as an angel of light. How do I know you're not some demon trying to deceive me? The being's large eyes regarded him steadily. If I were here to deceive you, would I be teaching about love? About forgiveness? About releasing guilt? Would I be showing you that your son still exists and loves you? Or would I be offering you power, revenge, satisfaction of your anger? Frank had no answer. Demons, Frank, feed on fear and separation. I am offering you connection and peace. You will know the truth by its fruits. Jesus taught that too. The church has studied these things for 2,000 years. Priests, theologians, scholars, they've dedicated their lives to understanding Jesus' teachings. Who are you to contradict centuries of doctrine? The church built an empire on incomplete truth. After Jesus died, those in power realized that empowered people don't need institutional control. So they changed his message. They transformed "the kingdom is within you" into "the kingdom is in a distant heaven you might reach if you obey us." But millions of people believe. Millions of people once believed the earth was flat. Majority belief does not equal truth. Jesus taught direct connection to God. The church teaches dependency on priests as intermediaries. Which sounds more like freedom? Which sounds more like control? Frank stood up, pacing in the small space. If this is true, what does that make me? A heretic? A fool? I was raised Catholic. My mother took me to Mass every Sunday. Everything I believed, everything I taught Danny, was it all wrong? Not wrong, incomplete. Your mother taught you the best truth she had access to. Now, you have access to deeper truth. Growing in understanding is not betrayal, it is evolution. Jesus said, "I have much more to say to you, but you cannot bear it now." You can bear it now. Frank slumped back onto the bed. But if this is true,
I've wasted so much time. You have wasted nothing. Every moment of suffering has brought you to this night, to this readiness. Pain is often the doorway to transformation. Why me? Frank's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm nobody special. I'm just a broken-down truck driver who couldn't save his own son. Why would cosmic beings care about me? Why would Jesus care about me? Jesus did not choose kings and priests. He chose fishermen, tax collectors, prostitutes, the broken, the wounded, the humble. Because the broken are open, Frank. The wounded understand suffering. The humble can receive truth without pride blocking the way. But I failed. I failed my son, my wife, my faith. You have failed at nothing. You have been learning, growing, preparing, and Danny is so proud of you, Frank. He knows you are about to wake up. He is waiting for you on the other side of this conversation, waiting for you to understand that he is okay, that you are okay, that love never dies. Fresh tears spilled down Frank's weathered face. If this is true, I've spent 5 years destroying myself for nothing. 5 years praying wrong, thinking wrong, believing wrong. Danny died afraid, and I should have known, should have been able to tell him the truth about death, that it's just transition. How many nights did he lie in bed scared of dying? And I told him the church's version. Be good, fear God, hope you're worthy. Frank, stop. Guilt about past ignorance is still guilt. You taught Danny what you believed. Now you know more. That is growth, not failure. But if I'd known then what you're telling me now, then Danny's death might not have shattered you open enough to receive this truth. Sometimes we must break before we can transform. Your suffering has purpose. Frank put his face in his hands. I just miss him so much. I know, and he misses your physical presence too. But missing is proof of love, and love is eternal. You have not lost him, Frank. You have only temporarily lost the ability to perceive him. That will change. This was the breaking point, the deepest wound finally exposed. Danny died scared. I saw his face in those last seconds. He looked at me like I could fix it, like Dad could make it okay. And I couldn't. I couldn't reach him in time. His last emotion on earth was fear, and I put that fear there because I taught him to be afraid of death. If what you're saying is true, that death is just consciousness shifting, then I made his transition harder. I made my little boy afraid in his last moments because I didn't know the truth. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, 5 years of compressed agony finally released. Frank, listen to me very carefully. The being's consciousness enveloped him, and for the first time, Frank felt something he could only describe as Danny's presence. Not the being's thoughts, but something else, something familiar and beloved. Danny was afraid for perhaps 3 seconds, and then he was free. And in that freedom, he understood immediately what you are only now learning. He forgave you instantly because he saw there was nothing to forgive. He has been waiting 5 years for you to forgive yourself. Please, Frank, let it go. Your son is begging you to let it go. Frank Morrison, 53-year-old truck driver, broken by guilt and grief, finally surrendered. Okay, he whispered. Okay. Show me, prove to me that Danny still exists, that he's okay, that death didn't end him. Please, I need to know. I will show you, but first, you must be willing to see. I'm willing. God help me. I'm willing. Then we begin.
The being's black eyes seemed to deepen, reflecting light that wasn't there. I will tell you things about Danny that no one could know. things that happened in private moments between father and son. Not to prove I have spied on you, but to prove that consciousness exists beyond physical limits and can perceive what happened even in your most intimate moments. Frank swallowed hard. Okay. 3 weeks before Danny died, you had insomnia. You went to his room at 2:17 a.m. and stood in his doorway, watching him sleep. He was lying on his side, clutching the stuffed bear your mother gave him, the brown one with the missing eye. You thought about how fragile he looked, how precious, how you would die for him if necessary. You said 7 words aloud, so quietly you barely heard yourself. I love you more than my own life. Frank's breath caught. He'd never told anyone about that moment. Not Sarah, not anyone. Danny woke up. Not physically, his body kept sleeping, but his consciousness registered your words. He felt your love, and Frank, he still feels it now. Every day, your love did not die with his body. How can you know that? Frank's voice shook. How can you possibly know that? Because consciousness leaves traces in the field of awareness that connects all things. Nothing is ever truly private. Nothing is ever truly lost. Every moment of love is recorded eternally. Frank put his hand over his mouth, overwhelmed. Danny also knows about the purple crown drawing he made for you that you keep in your wallet, the one of your truck with Best Daddy misspelled. You look at it every night before you sleep. He knows, Frank. He sees. Frank pulled out his wallet with trembling hands and unfolded the worn paper, a child's drawing in purple crayon, edges soft from years of handling. This isn't possible, he whispered, but it was. Now I will tell you about yourself, things no external observer could see, things you hide even from yourself. The being's voice in Frank's mind was gentle but unflinching. You have a recurring dream. It comes 3 or 4 times each month. In it, you are running toward Danny in slow motion. He is in the street. The car is coming. But in the dream, you reach him in time. You grab him. You pull him to safety. And when you wake up, the relief lasts exactly 3 seconds before reality crashes back. Then you spend the next hour hating yourself for waking up, for returning to a world where Danny is dead. Frank's hands clenched into fists. Stop! You need to hear this. Your body carries the trauma, Frank. You have pain in your right knee, from where you fell after the impact when your legs gave out. The doctors called it arthritis, but it is your body remembering the moment you failed to reach him. The pain comes worst on October 17th every year. It was true, every word of it. Your left shoulder tenses when you see children cross streets. Your heart rate increases. Your hands grip the steering wheel harder. You have driven past 3 accidents in 5 years and could not stop to help because seeing injured bodies triggers memories you cannot control. How are you doing this? Frank demanded. I am reading the energy patterns your consciousness emits. Every trauma, every emotion, every memory creates signatures. Jesus could do this too. That is how he knew what people needed before they spoke. He perceived their energy patterns. Now ask me something only you and Danny knew, something you have never spoken aloud. Test me. Frank thought frantically. Then he had it. A private joke between them that no one else would understand. What did Danny call broccoli? Little trees. He called them little trees, and you would pretend to be a giant eating forests when you made him eat vegetables. Frank laughed, tears streaming down his face. Yes! Oh God, yes! Ask me another. What was the last thing I said to Danny before... Frank couldn't finish.
"See you in 20 minutes, kiddo. Stay with Mom." You said it from the car window. You were going back for the picnic basket you'd forgotten. Those were the last words your voice spoke to his ears. Frank doubled over, grief and relief warring in his chest. But Frank, those were not the last words Danny heard from you. Would you like to know what he heard after? After? After he died? After his body died. When his consciousness separated, as he transitioned, you were shouting his name. Do you remember? I was screaming. I couldn't stop screaming. He heard you, not with ears. Consciousness does not need ears. He heard your love, your agony, your desperation. And his last thought in that transitional moment was, "Don't be sad, Daddy. I'm okay. I'm okay." Frank broke completely, sobs racking his body. "Now I will show you something concrete. Look at your truck's dashboard, at the digital clock." Frank wiped his eyes and looked through the window at the truck's cab. The clock read 12:47. Watch. As Frank stared, the numbers flickered, then changed. 8:17. His son's birthday, August 17th. I did not change your clock, Frank. I simply asked Danny's consciousness to interact with the electromagnetic field. He is here. He is with us now, and he wants you to know he never left. The numbers flickered again. 12:47. "Danny?" Frank whispered to the empty truck cab. "Are you really here?" The dome light flashed once, twice, 3 times. He is answering. That is Danny telling you yes. Now close your eyes. I will show you what Jesus showed his disciples after his resurrection. I will briefly open your perception to the frequency where Danny exists. I don't know if I can. Trust me. Close your eyes. Frank closed his eyes, heart hammering. At first, nothing. Darkness. Then, light. Not physical light, but awareness light. And in that light, a presence. Familiar. Beloved. Unmistakably Danny. Not an image, not a ghost, but consciousness. Alive, aware, joyful, eternal. And Frank felt his son's love wash over him like a wave, carrying a message without words. I'm okay, Dad. I've always been okay. Stop hurting yourself. I forgive you. You don't need forgiveness, but I give it anyway. I love you. I'm waiting for you, but not yet. You have more to do. Live, Dad. Please, live. When Frank opened his eyes 5 seconds later, though it felt like an eternity, his face was soaked with tears. He's real. He's still real. He was never not real, Frank. Death does not end consciousness. It only changes its form. Jesus knew this. He demonstrated this. And now you know it too. Frank Morrison, who had spent 5 years believing his son was gone forever, finally understood. Danny had never left. Death was not an ending. It was a doorway. And love walked through doorways unchanged.
The being shifted slightly, its silver blood no longer flowing. Frank knew, somehow, that its physical form was failing. They didn't have much time. Now I will tell you what Jesus really meant when he said, I am the resurrection and the life. This is the core truth that was changed, diluted, hidden by those who came after him. I'm listening. Jesus was not claiming to be the only consciousness that survives death. He was demonstrating a universal principle. Consciousness is eternal. When he said, I am the resurrection, he meant, I am proof that awareness continues beyond physical death. When he said, I am the life, he meant, I am the eternal consciousness that animates all forms. The being's thoughts came faster now, urgent. His resurrection was not a miracle, not in the way you understand miracles. It was a demonstration of physics. Jesus deliberately withdrew his consciousness from his physical body, allowed it to appear dead, then reintegrated to prove to his followers that death is illusion, that the real you cannot die. But the church says Jesus died for your sins. And in a way, this is true, but not how they teach it. Jesus demonstrated that death has no power over consciousness, thus defeating death. But this defeat was not unique to him. It is available to every consciousness, including yours, including Danny's. Frank's mind reeled. So, when people die, they're all like Jesus was after the resurrection? Still aware? Still existing? Exactly. The difference is that most people, when they die, do not choose to reintegrate with a physical body. They transition fully to non-physical existence. Jesus chose to return temporarily to prove the principle. You must understand something fundamental, Frank. You are not your body. Your body is something consciousness, you, inhabit temporarily, like wearing clothes. When Danny's body died, Danny did not die. The essential awareness that made Danny Danny continues, will always continue. But where? Where is he? Everywhere and nowhere. Consciousness without a body is not limited by space. Danny can perceive you here in this truck. He can perceive his mother in Philadelphia. He can perceive both simultaneously, because consciousness is not bound by location. Think of it this way. Your body is like a radio receiver. Consciousness is the signal. When the radio breaks, the signal does not stop. It simply stops being received by that particular device, but the signal continues broadcasting. Frank slowly nodded, beginning to understand. Jesus tried to teach this. He said, "Before Abraham was, I am." Not I was, I am, present tense. Because consciousness exists in eternal now, outside of time. Danny exists in that same eternal now. He is not in the past. He is alive, present, aware, just not wearing a physical form anymore. For 5 years, you prayed to be reunited with Danny. For 5 years, you felt those prayers went unanswered. But Frank, you have been reunited with Danny every single day. He has been present with you constantly. Your prayers were answered. You simply didn't have the perception to recognize it. Because I didn't know he still existed? Exactly. You were praying to a distant God to return something that was never lost. Your grief created a frequency of separation, and that frequency prevented you from perceiving Danny's continued presence. Jesus taught this too. He said, "The kingdom of God is within you." He said, "Seek and you will find." He was teaching that connection to the divine and to those you love is not found in external searching, but in internal recognition. Now, the hardest truth. Your guilt has been the only separating you from perceiving Danny's presence. Not God's judgment, not your unworthiness, not punishment for failure. Your own guilt created a vibrational frequency that blocked your ability to sense what was always there. Frank felt this land in his chest like a weight. Danny has been trying to reach you for 5 years. In dreams, in synchronicities, in moments when you felt inexplicable warmth or peace. But your guilt said, "I don't deserve peace. I don't deserve comfort. I failed him." and that belief became a wall. So, I've been doing this to myself? Yes, but without judgment, Frank. You did not know. How could you? You were taught that death separates, that God judges worthiness, that suffering is punishment. All of these beliefs created the prison you have lived in, but the door has always been unlocked. You simply didn't know you could open it.
Jesus said, "Your sins are forgiven." But he did not mean God was granting permission for you to exist. He meant sins, mistakes, failures, human limitations. These are already forgiven because God does not need to forgive what God never condemned. You are a fragment of God, Frank, having temporary human experience. Making mistakes is part of learning. God does not need you to be perfect any more than you needed Danny to be perfect. You loved Danny unconditionally. God loves you unconditionally. That is the real gospel, the good news Jesus came to deliver. So, I never needed to earn forgiveness? Never. You have always been loved, always been worthy, always been connected to Source. Your belief in separation was the only separation that existed. When Jesus appeared to his disciples after death, he was showing them, and you, that consciousness continues, that love survives death, that the real you is eternal. This is why he told Mary Magdalene, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father." He was teaching that physical presence is temporary, but consciousness connection is eternal. Danny wants you to understand this, Frank. He does not want you holding on to his physical absence. He wants you to recognize his consciousness presence. This is true resurrection, not bringing dead bodies back to life, but recognizing that consciousness never died. You have suffered these 5 years for a reason, not as punishment, but as preparation. You are now one of the few humans who truly understands that death is illusion, that consciousness is eternal, that love transcends physical form. What am I supposed to do with this knowledge? Live it. Demonstrate it. When you meet others who are drowning in grief, in guilt, in fear of death, you will recognize them, and you will offer them the truth that Jesus taught, that I have shown you, that Danny wants desperately for others to understand. You are not just a truck driver anymore, Frank. You are a living testimony to the truth of consciousness continuity. Your pain has given you credibility. Your transformation will give others hope. My physical form is dying now, Frank. In perhaps 20 minutes, this body will cease functioning. But I, the consciousness you have been speaking with, will not end. I will transition just as Danny transitioned, just as you will transition someday. Frank grabbed the being's small hand. No, I can't lose you too. You've given me everything. You've saved my life. You cannot lose what is eternal. When this body dies, I will still exist. And if you practice what I have taught you, if you learn to perceive beyond physical limitations, you may even sense my presence sometimes, as you will learn to sense Danny's. This is Jesus' real teaching. Death cannot separate love, cannot end consciousness, cannot destroy the connections that matter. How do I thank you? How do I possibly thank you? By living, Frank. By releasing guilt. By knowing Danny is okay. By helping others understand what you now understand. That is all the thanks I need. That is all Danny needs too.
At 1:47 a.m., something fundamental shifted in Frank Morrison's consciousness. Not belief. Belief could be tentative, uncertain. This was knowing. Deep, cellular, unshakable knowing. "Danny isn't gone," he whispered. "He's just different." Yes, now you understand. The weight that had crushed Frank's chest for 5 years began to lift, not disappear. The sadness remained, but the suffocating guilt, the toxic shame, the belief that his son had been annihilated by death, that dissolved. Frank wept, but these tears were different from the thousands he had cried before. These weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief so profound it felt like being born again. "I've wasted so much time," he said between sobs. "You have wasted nothing. Every moment brought you here, to this truck, to this night, to this understanding." The being's hand was cold now, its breathing shallow. "Danny is proud of you, Frank, so proud." As the truth integrated into Frank's body, something remarkable happened. The chronic pain in his right knee, his arthritis that doctors couldn't fully explain, simply stopped. He stood up, testing weight on the leg. No pain. What just happened? Your body was holding trauma, guilt made physical. When you released the guilt, the body released its grip. Jesus healed this way, by addressing the consciousness patterns creating illness. Frank looked out the truck window at the desert night. The stars looked brighter somehow, the darkness less oppressive. He could swear he felt presences, not threatening, but watchful, benevolent. "Is Danny, can he see me right now?" "He has never stopped seeing you, but now, for the first time, you might be able to sense him seeing you. Try. Be still. Feel." Frank closed his eyes, and there, so faint he might have imagined it, but he knew he didn't, a warmth, a presence, a sense of being loved. "Danny?" The dome light in the truck flickered once. Frank laughed through tears. "He's really here." At 2:15 a.m., the being's breathing stopped. Its large black eyes dulled. The small body went still in Frank's arms. And Frank, who would have panicked 5 hours ago, who would have been traumatized by watching another death, felt only peace. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." For just a moment, the being's consciousness brushed against Frank's, a wordless goodbye. A transmission of love, a promise, until we meet again in the eternal now. Then it was gone. Not ended, Frank understood that now, just departed from physical form. Frank sat in his truck as the sun began to rise, watching light paint the Nevada desert gold and pink. He had decisions to make, practical, immediate decisions. Call the police? And tell them what? That an alien crashed and died in his truck? They'd think he was insane. Or worse, they'd confiscate everything, including the body, and Frank would spend weeks or months in interrogation. No, he would bury the being here, in the desert, with respect and love. A private grave for a cosmic traveler who'd come billions of miles to save one broken trucker's soul. As Frank dug a grave in the hard desert soil at dawn, using a shovel from his emergency kit, he understood what he needed to do. He would continue driving trucks, he would maintain his roots, but everything would be different now. Every lonely driver at truck stops, every grieving widow at rest areas, every person he met who carried guilt or fear or overwhelming sadness, he would recognize them. And when the moment was right, he would share what he'd learned. Not preaching, not evangelizing, just offering truth when truth was needed. Death is not the end. Your loved ones still exist. Guilt serves no purpose. Love is eternal. 6 months later, Frank called his ex-wife for the first time in 8 months. "Sarah, it's Frank." "Frank? Is everything okay?" "Everything is... Sarah, I need to tell you something. About Danny. He's okay. I know he's okay." There was silence. Then, "Frank, have you been drinking?" "I'm completely sober. More sober than I've been in 5 years. Listen, I can't explain everything on the phone, but I need you to know. Danny didn't end. Death didn't take him from us. He's just... different, and he wants us to stop suffering." There was silence. Then, quietly, "I want to believe that." "Then believe it, please. I have so much to tell you." 6 months later, Frank Morrison was still driving trucks, but now his truck's CB handle was Phoenix because he'd risen from the ashes of who he'd been. Drivers started noticing something different about him. He'd talk to anyone going through hard times. He had this way of listening that made people open up. And the things he'd say about death, about consciousness, about love continuing, people said it changed them. Some thought he was crazy. Others recognized truth when they heard it. Frank didn't mind either reaction. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was just living his truth that his son existed beyond physical form, that death was transformation rather than ending, and that the guilt he'd carried for 5 years had been unnecessary from the start. On the anniversary of Danny's death, October 17, 1987, 6 months after his encounter, Frank drove to the cemetery, not to visit a corpse, but to sit beside a marker and talk to his son. "I know you're not really here, kiddo. I know you're everywhere. But I still like having a place to come." The wind rustled through nearby trees. "I'm okay now. Finally okay. And I know you are too. Thank you for sending that visitor. Thank you for waiting for me to understand." A hawk circled overhead, Danny's favorite bird. Frank smiled. "Yeah, I see you too."
The week after Frank's encounter transformed from mere passage of time into active awakening. Sleep, which had eluded him in meaningful form for 5 years, returned. Not because the sadness disappeared, he still missed Danny's physical presence, but because the crushing guilt was gone. He started noticing synchronicities everywhere. The number 817, Danny's birthday, appeared constantly, on receipts, mile markers, digital clocks when he glanced at them. Where before Frank might have dismissed these as coincidence, now he recognized them as Danny's way of saying, "I'm here, I'm present, I see you." His body continued healing in ways that defied medical explanation. The knee pain never returned. Tension in his shoulders, constant for 5 years, released. His doctor, noting the changes during his 6-month CDL physical, simply said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Sarah came to visit him in Carson City 2 weeks after their phone conversation. They met at a coffee shop, the first time they'd been face-to-face since the divorce. "You look different," she said. "Younger, somehow." Frank smiled. "I feel different. I feel alive again." He told her everything, the crash, the being, the revelations about consciousness and death, and Danny's continued existence. She listened without interrupting, tears streaming down her face. "Do you believe me?" he asked when he had finished. "I don't know if I believe an alien told you all this," she said carefully, "but I believe something happened to you. I believe you've healed. And Frank, I've felt Danny around me too. I just thought I was losing my mind." "You're not losing your mind. You're perceiving what was always there." They weren't ready to reconcile as husband and wife. Too much water under that bridge. But they rebuilt a friendship, united by their love for their son and their new understanding that he still existed. Back on the road, Frank became known in the trucking community as someone who could help with grief. Drivers would seek him out at truck stops, drawn by something they couldn't quite name. "You lost your kid too, right? How do you keep going?" Frank didn't preach, he just shared. Death isn't what we think it is. Consciousness continues. Love continues. I know my son still exists. Not believe, know. And that changes everything. These conversations happened 3, 4, 5 times a week. Each time, Frank would see something shift in the other person's eyes. Not always belief, but at least hope. And hope was enough to start with. Frank developed a daily practice, simple but profound. Morning, 5 minutes of silent gratitude, feeling Danny's presence. Throughout the day, awareness of synchronicities, acknowledging Danny's signals. Evening, journaling about moments of connection, lessons learned. Night, before sleep, sending love to Danny across the dimensional veil. These weren't prayers in the traditional sense. They were conscious communication with a consciousness he now understood existed beyond physical limitations. 3 months after his encounter, Frank got a call from Sarah. "My sister Linda lost her husband last month. Heart attack. She's drowning, Frank. Wants to die herself. I told her about what you learned. She wants to talk to you." Frank flew to Philadelphia, his first plane trip in a decade. He spent 3 days with Linda, sharing everything the being had taught him. "You're telling me Tom isn't gone? That he's just in a different state?" "Not just telling you, I'm testifying to you. I've experienced this truth. Your husband's consciousness continues. He's probably trying to reach you right now, but grief is blocking your perception." Linda cried for hours. Then she started asking questions. Then, slowly, hope replaced despair. 6 months later, Linda wrote him, "I felt Tom last week, really felt him. You saved my life." But Frank knew he hadn't saved her life. He'd simply shared truth that the being had shared with him, that Jesus had originally taught, that humanity had mostly forgotten. Death is not the end. Love is eternal. Consciousness cannot be destroyed. And once you truly understand this, everything changes.
Frank Morrison's journey reveals something you may have suspected but never had the courage to fully embrace. Death is not what they told you. You've been taught to fear it, to see it as the end, the separation, the ultimate loss. Churches built entire doctrines around making death terrifying enough that you'd need their intercession, their prayers, their approval to face it. But what if everything you were taught about death was designed to control you rather than free you? Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life," not "I alone possess life after death." He was demonstrating a universal principle. Consciousness is eternal. When he appeared to his disciples after dying, he was proving that awareness continues beyond physical form. The same is true for everyone you've lost. Your mother, father, spouse, child, friend, they are not gone. They have simply withdrawn from physical form, like taking off a coat. The coat is not them. They continue, aware, loving, present, just not wearing a body anymore. This is not wishful thinking. This is physics you don't yet understand. Frank carried guilt for 5 years that was never his to carry. How many years have you carried guilt, grief, fear, believing that death separated you from someone you loved? What if that separation is illusion? What if they've been trying to reach you all along, but your belief in their absence prevented you from perceiving their presence? When Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he meant it literally. Heaven is not a distant place you might reach if you're good enough. It's a frequency of consciousness you can access right now. When he said, "You will do greater works than I have done," he wasn't being humble. He was telling you that the same eternal consciousness that animated his body animates yours. You are not powerless. You are not separate from God. You are not abandoned. You are eternal consciousness having a temporary physical experience. And everyone you've lost is in the same eternal now, watching, loving, waiting for you to understand. Now you have a choice. You can close this video and return to the comfortable illusion that death is the end, that your loved ones are gone forever, that guilt and grief are appropriate responses to loss. Or you can do what Frank did. You can open yourself to the possibility that consciousness continues, that love transcends physical form, that the people you've lost are just a frequency shift away from your perception. Leave a comment and tell me, have you ever felt a presence after someone died? A sign, a synchronicity, a moment where you knew, just knew, they were still there? Have you carried guilt for something that happened beyond your control? Do you long for proof that death is not the end?
Share your story below. You're not alone in these experiences. Thousands of others are waking up to the same truth Frank discovered. Death is not the enemy. Ignorance of death's true nature is the enemy. If you want more stories like this, testimonies that challenge everything you thought you knew about Jesus, death, and the eternal nature of consciousness, subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell. Because Frank Morrison isn't the only one who has encountered beings with these revelations. There are more stories, more witnesses, more evidence that everything you were taught about death is incomplete. Remember, Jesus' resurrection was not him coming back from non-existence. It was him demonstrating that consciousness never stopped existing. Your loved ones didn't come back from non-existence because they never went into non-existence. They are alive, aware, present, and they are waiting for you to understand that death changed only their form, never their love, never their awareness, never their eternal connection to you. You are the one who needs to resurrect, not them. Resurrect your understanding. Release your guilt. Recognize that love is stronger than death because love is consciousness and consciousness is eternal. Welcome to the truth Jesus taught 2,000 years ago. Welcome to the understanding that will set you free.